I've got so much to be thankful for.
Highly Relatable is a podcast about sobriety, healing, travel, reinvention, relationships, and the messy middle of becoming who you really are. Hosted by Brit Vermeire, this show is honest, funny, unfiltered, and rooted in real life. Some episodes are solo story times and reflections, while others feature guests sharing relatable conversations about growth, identity, change, and what it actually looks like to rebuild your life. If you've ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, in between, or ready for more, this is your place.
Hey guys, 2026 is officially more than halfway over. That's insane to think about, but we are in July and in the full swing of it. And honestly, if you would have asked me January 1st what I thought this year was going to look like, there was no way I could have expected what this year was going to turn out to be. The things that I've accomplished this far in the first 6.5 months of this year have been incredibly beautiful and also mind-blowing. They've also just brought me so much joy, the things that I've been able to accomplish. And it's not because I've got everything figured out now. I still question myself. I still doubt myself. I still wonder, if anybody's actually listening to this podcast, if my blog, the writings that I put out there have any meaning to anybody. But I've stopped looking at the numbers. I've stopped worrying about the downloads, the impressions, the likes, the views. And I've started focusing more on the moments that have happened so far this year, the people I've met, the experiences that I've had, the doors that have opened simply because I knocked. Today, I obviously don't have a guest with me. It's just me, myself, and I. And I wanted to do a little reflecting on the first half of this year because my first couple episodes have been a little bit heavier. They've been completely sobriety driven and, the darkness that sometimes comes with this. And I wanted to talk about the positive experiences and the things that have happened to me in the first 6.5 months of this year. So last year I started my sober journey. I wasn't really sharing it. And this year I blew the doors wide open on that situation. And I think that that's when everything really changed for me. And hopefully it's changed for you too, because every person that listens to an episode here, if they feel a little less alone, then every uncomfortable conversation, every vulnerable moment I've shared has been worth it. And when I started thinking about this episode, I was asking myself one question: what has truly changed this year compared to last year on my sober journey? Obviously, July 8th, I was officially 16 months alcohol-free, so 16 and counting. And obviously that's been a huge part of my story, but it's not even the biggest change. In the last 6.5 months, I've continued to write. I've shared my blog publicly. We started this podcast. I started a travel business. I've met some incredible people. And the conversations that I've been having are conversations I would have never imagined myself having. I've been dreaming bigger than ever. And what's crazy is that none of those things happened because of one huge breakthrough. They all happened because I was brave enough to make one small decision after another. Most people sit around waiting and wishing for something to change for them. And life doesn't usually work like that. Life changes when you send the email, when you hit publish, when you reach out to a stranger, when you ask the questions, and when you pull up a seat at a table where there was no room for you. I think that the first thing that happened for me was after my very first episode of this podcast, I talked about Sam Dema and his book, Empty Your Backpack. And his message really stuck with me from that book. And I think the old version of Brittany probably would have listened to some clips from his podcast, maybe read his book, and thought, wow, that was inspiring, and I would have moved on. This Brittany on this couch, currently today, she sent an email. I reached out. I shared a little bit of my story with him, the journey I've been on, and what Highly Relatable is. The next day, my phone lit up, and it was a notification that I had received an email from Sam Dumma. And it's all I could see was the very beginning. Hey, Brit, thank you so much for reaching out. I didn't open the email. I didn't finish it. I called my sister, and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Janelle knew exactly why I was excited. Her and I had spent the night before I sent the email reviewing it, making sure my grammar was perfect, making sure that I didn't sound chaotic, and really shared my message with him and just letting him know that he really inspired me. So when I called her, she knew exactly why I was excited. And she said something to me that's gonna stay with me for the rest of my life. And she said, remember this moment. The feeling I had was pure joy. And it wasn't just because somebody that inspired me actually followed up with me. It's because in that moment, I realized that maybe I can do this. Maybe people do answer emails. Maybe reaching out isn't embarrassing or cringe. And maybe the worst thing that could happen isn't that they're gonna say no. Maybe the best thing is that they're gonna say yes. Sam didn't just respond to me once, he responded to me twice. He encouraged me to continue on this journey. He introduced me to the folks at the Youth Speaker University, and I've been in communication with his contact, Josh, there. But he opened a door and reminded me that people are far more willing to help than we give them credit for. And that's when I first started noticing something: manifesting. I didn't believe in manifestation. I wasn't that person. But I truly believe that I've been manifesting things into my life. Some may say it's fate. Some may simply say it's because I had the courage to say things out loud. I don't exactly know what to call it, but we're gonna go with manifesting. Sitting around waiting and wishing for things doesn't make them happen. Saying it out loud, putting it in writing, putting it out into the world. Once you do, something starts to happen. Maybe the universe starts listening, maybe other people start listening, or maybe you just truly are starting to listen to yourself. But whatever it is, I'm watching it happen in real time in my own life right now. I talked about wanting to start this podcast. Here we are. I talked about wanting to reach out to people that admired me, and Sam wrote me back. I talked about wanting to visit Soft Bar. A few weeks later, I was standing inside of it. I talked about wanting to create more non-alcoholic options for people right here in our hometown. And that conversation is happening. And it's hard to ignore that the more I say yes, the more I put myself out there, the more the universe keeps saying yes back and keeps giving me opportunities. If you listen to episode 3 with myself and Brittany Bull, we talked about Soft Bar and how inspired I was by Carl Radke and his sobriety and his vulnerability and what he was building with that bar. And fast forward a week later, I'm out in New Jersey visiting my sister, and I told her about Soft Bar, and she was like, all right, let's go. It's an hour and 30 minutes from their house into Brooklyn. And I went there and I just wanted to experience it. I had no intentions or true hopes that he would even be there. But before we left the house, I wrote him a thank you note. And it just said, thank you for being so public and sharing your sober journey. It truly does give others hope. I also thanked him for creating a space where people could come together and alcohol wasn't the center of why everyone was there. I tucked the card into my purse and I wholeheartedly figured I'm gonna walk in there, I'm gonna end up giving it to a bartender and fingers crossed, hope that it gets to Carl. And we walked in and he was sitting at a table and he was talking with people. And immediately, like, my heart rate was up. I was so excited and I played it cool, unlike I did back in the day when I saw Nikki Glazer in our hotel room at the pageant. I went full on pretend to take a selfie, have Nikki in the background. But I was like, okay, be cool. You know, this is a completely different space. And Janelle and Erica and I sat there and we each ordered 3 different drinks. Each one was delicious and amazing. And we perused the whole menu, and I was just so excited to be there. And I saw him sitting at that table, and I thought, always with a group of friends, like, don't be that person, don't bother him. And so we ordered our second round. We tried 6 different drinks, all of us in total, and each and every one of them was better than the last. I was introduced to new brands who I'm actually gonna try to start working with, Dry and Dirty. They create non-alcoholic martinis, and it was so cool. And then 3 spirits they added into their non-alcoholic sparkling wine. It reminded me of like a fizzy or a spritz with some fruit in it. It was delicious. But anyways, Carl stood up and started walking towards the door. We were at the end of the bar near the front. And as he started to walk past, I just smiled and he smiled back, and he walked up and we started talking. And I said, I have something for you. It's a thank you card. And he asked, do you want me to open it right now? And I nervously laughed and was like, no, because I was embarrassed. My face was probably beet red. But we sat there and we talked about my own sober journey and how at that point I was almost 16 months sober. We talked about Highly Relatable. We talked about this podcast. And he talked to me about what the 2-year mark looked like for him, and talked me through like what else is still coming. And I just can't help but look back and realized that old Brittany would have probably never even gone to that bar. Even as a Summer House fan, the show that Carl's on, I probably would have never wanted to go because I knew that it didn't have an option for me to be drinking. This version of Brittany walked into that bar knowing its mission and wanting to be a part of it. I walked in there with a card in hand in hopes that I would be able to someday get it to Carl, and I did. And the week before that, I spoke that into fruition. I am telling you. A few weeks later, after I left that bar in Brooklyn, I took that experience with me back home. And I had the opportunity to sit down with a local business owner here in Quincy. And I already asked him if it was okay if I kind of talk about it, but I sat down with Nick Highland at the range and we had a conversation. And first and foremost, I want to thank him for being willing to have that conversation with me. But the range is so much more than a driving range. It's a restaurant, it's an event place. It is where people go to watch the World Cup, to watch all the sporting events, to go on a first date. It's where families get together when they're in town. And he talked about how they want to be inclusive of everyone. You know, they don't want to just be a bar. They don't just want to be a restaurant. They don't just want to be the range. And I was so excited. Like, honestly, I kind of feel like I've got a little bit of goosebumps thinking about how this is going to potentially come to fruition here in Quincy. But Nick was willing to hear what I had to say, and we're working on meeting with some distributors to sit down and do some sample testing of some different non-alcoholic options that we can bring to the range. So the sober driver, the pregnant mom, the person in recovery, somebody that's sober curious, or somebody who's just choosing not to drink has other options than soda or water or your basic NAs. I was really excited to meet with him, and I think that his openness is going to be huge for what I'm trying to do with having better options. And after that episode with Brittany, when we talked about that, somebody reached out to me, and she was so excited to hear me talking about that. So I'm hoping that she watches this next episode and knows that I'm still working hard to get us some more options. I'm in no way trying to turn the range into a sober bar, but I am excited that they're willing to make it a space that's inclusive of everyone. And hopefully this fall, I can work with Nick on some specials to, promote some non-alcoholic products there. So, getting back to the person that was really excited about that option, it's not just me that this is benefiting. Having that one small conversation has opened the door, and it's creating better options for other people. And if that helps the next person and the next person, that's the effect that I want Highly Relatable to have, that ripple, being a river, not a reservoir. And if I had never walked into Soft Bar, I probably would have never had the courage to have this conversation with Nick, because I had the opportunity to view it firsthand. I have the experience to talk about, and I think that is so cool. Another really amazing experience I just had was I went to a FIFA World Cup game in Kansas City, and first and foremost, insane experience, something I will never, ever forget. The energy, the joy, the people, the country coming together with other countries and celebrating. It was beautiful. And when I think about that experience, I think old Brittany would have been in the parking lot tailgating hours before and would have walked into the stadium half sloshed already. But this version, we sat out in the parking lot for an hour. I had packed a couple NAs, and when I walked into the venue, I was able to order another one. But first, when I sat down, something I realized was that everybody to the left of me, everybody to the right of me, we were in the Algerian section. Nobody was drinking. It was Coca-Cola, water, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, water. And I thought, these people have come over here to celebrate their teams, and they celebrate so differently than we do. And I thought, this is a problem. This is a problem. Because this was at Arrowhead, not a Chiefs fan, go Bills. But if this was a Chiefs game, it would have been draft beers, spilled all over the floor, stacked cups. And I was like, that's us, that's our culture, that's the US, that's not the world. But the next thing I saw was on the advertisement, the scoreboards, the banners running all around the stadium, Michelob Ultra Zero. Michelob was the sponsor, but they were promoting their non-alcoholic brand. And they weren't promoting it as the other alternative option. It was front and center. And then I thought, okay, we're making some progress here. But I will never be able to take away that memory and not remember pieces of it, because I was there, I was sober, and it's mine. And I've talked about making memories, and I've talked about that. And I want this episode to be a little bit of joy and the other side of sobriety. So I had to share that experience. Shout out to FIFA, the World Cup, Arrowhead, the Algerian fans. We were third row behind the goal, and we were part of the Algerian family that night. We rode, we held their flag. Colin held the drum as they were beating on the drum. It was just such an amazing experience. And alcohol wasn't the magic. Life, my presence, being there was the magic. And I think that's a huge lesson that sobriety has been teaching me. Not drinking has changed my life. But it wasn't the drinking that I stopped and it was the change in my life. It was because I had finally created space to become who I'm supposed to be. Someone who raises her hand, someone who asks the questions, somebody who sends the email, someone brave enough to start a conversation. I've started believing and saying to myself, why not me? And that's become my new question. Why not email Sam? Why not start this podcast? Why not go to Soft Bar? Why not introduce myself? Why not ask our local businesses to carry more non-alcoholic options? Why not reach out to the next person that I'm inspired by? The answer might not always be yes. I may not even get a response. I'm headed to Bourbon and Beyond in September. It's a big music fest, and Cameron Whitcomb is a musician who writes about his sobriety and his journey, and he's actually performing a set there. So I DM'd him on Instagram. I found his email address from his PR and website, sent him a message, and just thanked him for his music and how it makes me feel seen. And if you're interested in him, it's Cameron Whitcomb, and his song Kingdom of Fear is my favorite, and Quitter is my second favorite. So look them up, do yourself the favor. He's an amazing and talented artist. And I haven't heard back, but maybe after this episode airs, I'll do the same thing I did with Sam. I'll send it to him and say, hey, I mentioned you. That's how that conversation started with Sam Dema. But I am building confidence, and people ask me, you just seem so much more confident now. And I truly feel like I am, but every single time I post one of my blogs or we upload this episode, I still get nervous. Every time I send an email to somebody I admire, I worry that they're gonna think, who the hell does she think she is? Those thoughts haven't disappeared, but I've just stopped letting them make decisions for me. I don't think that bravery or courage is the absence of fear. I think that it's understanding and hearing those fears and doubts in yourself and still pressing play, still pressing publish, still posting. Because, like I said, making one small brave decision after another builds momentum. And I think something that's been very unexpected as part of this journey is some of the messages. I've expected people to relate to my sobriety journey, but I've been overwhelmed by the people that have expressed relation to my courage, my rebuilding, my starting over. I recently had somebody reach out to me who said, while alcohol isn't their struggle, food is. And somehow the emotions that I described, the rebuilding, the shame, the starting over, the learning to trust yourself again, all of that resonated with them. And that absolutely filled my heart with joy, because it reminded me that this podcast and my blog and everything I'm doing, it's not just about sobriety. It's not just about an alcohol-free life. It's about healing. It's about becoming. It's about believing in yourself again and knowing that one chapter closing isn't the end. And again, if my story can help someone who's struggling with something completely different than I'm even struggling with, then maybe vulnerability truly is universal. I have convinced myself that my story is hopefully helping people that are struggling. And the more messages I receive, the more convinced I am that I am becoming the person that I truly am supposed to be. I loved being a recruiter. I genuinely loved finding careers that fit people. It was incredibly rewarding. But when that career ended, and not because I made the choice, because Amazon decided that 30,000 people's jobs were disposable based on AI, it was a real kick in the pants, for sure. But it brought me to this. It helped give me the courage to keep moving forward. And now I get to help people find hope. And I don't know how to explain it any better than this, but I feel like I found what I'm meant to do. And not because I have all the answers, but because I'm finally asking questions out loud. And people listening that hear those questions, they're feeling less alone. And every vulnerable story and every time I've talked to you, it's made it worth it. This doesn't feel like a hobby anymore. This feels like my calling. I honestly can feel this in my heart, in my soul, and in my bones. Not drinking changed my life, but telling my story has changed me. Every blog post has made me trust myself a little bit more. Every podcast episode has made me a little bit braver. Every conversation I've had has introduced me to someone I thought I'd maybe never have the opportunity to meet in my lifetime. A year ago, I was asking myself, who am I without alcohol? Today, I'm asking myself, who can I continue to become? Honestly, I think that that's a much more exciting question. And it's because for the first time in a really long time, I'm looking forward to who I can become and finding that out. There's one more person I want to mention before I wrap up today's episode, and that's my Aunt Rosie, Roseanne Leeson. She passed away a handful of years ago, but she was my safe space. She was a person who made me feel comfortable in every version of myself. I would call her a spiritual counselor, a spiritual guide. She had people that would come to her and sit with her and talk with her, and they would talk about what they were feeling or what they were going through in their lives. And she never looked at it as a business. And when people offered to pay her, she would call them love offerings. She never charged anybody to come sit with them and talk through their anxieties and their fears and their financial woes or their relationship problems. She just was there. And she had an incredible way of making people feel accepted. She always made me feel accepted. I sat with her and talked through issues. And I know that if she was still alive today, she would want to be sitting here on this couch with me because that's the type of person she was. But my Aunt Rosie always called me BJ. My name is Brittany Jo. And every time I post a blog, every time we hit upload on a YouTube video for this podcast, I can hear her voice. BJ, I'm proud of you. Maybe that's my heart talking. Maybe it's my grief. But I can hear her. And I choose to believe that she's still cheering me on in heaven. And I hope that what I'm creating here carries a little bit of the spirit that she carried through her own life. I want to create a place where people feel safe, where people feel seen, where people can feel heard. I want to create a space where when people listen to this, they leave feeling a little lighter than they did when they came in. And if I can build even a small piece of that, I think she'd be really proud. And honestly, I think she'd tell me to keep going. Speaking of people who have always been my biggest cheerleader, I've talked about her in every episode. I will continue to talk about her in every episode. My sister Janelle will be joining me for our next episode. I'm so excited. She has been my biggest cheerleader through every season of my life. She reminds me to remember the good moments. She helps me get through those hard moments. And I'm so excited to have her on to talk about growing up together, what younger versions of ourselves looked like, how our relationship has evolved, how sobriety has not only changed me, but how I hope I've become a better sister and an aunt. I think you're gonna laugh with us. We may get emotional, but I honestly can't wait to share that conversation with you. And one last thing before I go, I have a favor. I need some help. I am looking at getting another tattoo, and I want it to be something small, simple, and meaningful. So I need your help. I'm torn between two ideas. I either want to get 0.0. Obviously, it represents being alcohol-free, but for me, it represents something even bigger. The starting over, the beginning again, the rebuilding from zero. My second idea is the location pin, the little red dot with the line. And that one is not just about sobriety and, I used to think that it was my final destination, but honestly, it's the place where my real life started. It's the point on the map where everything changed. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you've seen it on Facebook, and you want to message me and let me know Team 0.0 or Team Location Pin, I would be thrilled. Or if you have another suggestion for me, I am open to it. I would genuinely love to hear people's thoughts. But the next episode is going to be a really fun one with my sister, and I can't wait for our very first siblings episode of Highly Relatable. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for cheering me on as I still figure this all out. I can't wait for this next conversation. Until then, I'm Brittany, and this is Highly Relatable.
So much to be thankful for. Look, I got a roof.
Thanks for being here. Life is weird, healing is messy, and none of us are doing it perfectly, which is exactly why this space exists. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to follow the show. Share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Check us out on our socials at highlyrelatable.com, Highly Relatable on Facebook, Highly Relatable Travel on Facebook and Instagram, or just reach out to me, Brittany at highlyrelatable.com. See you next time. Stay highly relatable.
I've got so much to be thankful for.